It's with great pleasure that we welcome you all to our last of the season program. And we'll get into a more formal introduction of Chris. After David, if you would help lead us in prayer as we begin our program.
Yes, good. Well, let's come together both in gratitude for this day and for Chris and his wisdom and willingness to share it with us. Also, this journey of this year is adult education and all of the programs. I see many faces of folks who put on excellent programs this year and this journey. Lots of folks who work hard each week to make adult ed what it is. So let's have a prayer both for today and for this year and for where the future holds. So loving God, we give you thanks for adult education and its ministry, both those gathered in this space and those many gathered around the country online, for the programs of this program year and all the blessings of heart and mind. In particular for this day, as we think during this Easter season, the promise of life and the mystery of death, the opportunity and challenge of preparing to be at a place of mortality in our own time, and whatever time that is. So living a good life, preparing for a good death, and all the mystery and challenge around it is an important topic. And we give thanks for Chris and for his willingness to share his gifts with us today. Bless him and bless each of us here as we bring heart and mind to this experience in this hour of adult education. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, it's with great pleasure that we welcome Chris, who is giving his time and presence with us, and hopefully beginning a relationship with our congregation. Chris has become very well known by addressing a very much just a subject that so many people shy away from, don't want to bring up, and yet every single one of us faces in probably multiple times as far as our family or our personal lives are concerned, death. And this is a subject that for which Chris has become particularly well known. He will introduce you, tell us a little bit more about how and why he got into this. And I don't want to spend any more time because he's the guy that knows this and is getting and is helping us along our journey in that. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Carol. Thank you.
Yes,
so much.
We'll talk about your book. I know.
Yes. I'm so delighted to be here. David, thank you. Denise, thank you. And so I've met some of you this morning. That's lovely. Thank you so much. This book, we've got some extra copies here at $20 if you want to buy them. But this book covers a wide array of topics. This is a big topic we're talking about, and it falls into, if you like, 3 buckets, right? There's before death, death itself, and after death. So that's a simple way to think about it. Before death, that's things like writing an ethical will, writing an advanced directive, writing a dementia rider to your advanced directive, living well to die well, things like that. That falls into that first bucket. The second bucket about death itself, that's palliative sedation, medical aid in dying, VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, ways to hasten death if you need to, if you are suffering with terrible pain and so on. And the last bucket, of course, is after death. That's body disposition, green burial, water cremation, natural organic reduction, things like that. So I was thinking, what am I going to do today? Because I could spend 2 hours on each one of those subjects. They're big subjects. So what I've done is I sort of randomly picked 3 topics for each from one of those buckets And I'll talk about it for about, a few minutes. And then invite after, and then invite questions. I'm going to pause every 5 minutes for questions from you and comments. And you are welcome to ask me anything you want, anything on your mind about aging, death, or dying. So don't feel constrained by what I've just been. If I've just been talking about natural organic reduction or human composting, don't feel you have to ask me about that. You can ask me about anything on your mind. So please start thinking about questions now that you might have about your futures, about parents, children, anything on your minds. So but I thought I would start. This has a funny title. This is a funny title, Achieving a Good Death. And the reason I call it funny is because some of you may be wondering, how can death possibly be good? It's the end of everything. Now, so I thought I would start. By talking just a little bit about what is a good death. And then I'll come back to some other topics. So, what is a good death? What is a good death? So, and I'll answer that question. A good death is a death that the person wants. It's subjective. There's no sort of one grand answer. And so some people may want medical interventions. Right? I mean, there are some people who get hip replacements in the last few days of their lives. This is madness, in my opinion, but this happens. Some people want medical interventions. They want to get on that medical conveyor belt and keep having intervention right up to the end. But for most people, including me, a good death is one where you're at home. You're surrounded by your loved ones. Gentle, loving things are being said. I love you. Thank you. I forgive you. Please forgive me. Goodbye. This is a good death is where there's not a lot of pain and suffering, where there are few regrets. I wouldn't say no regrets because we're all human. We all have regrets, but a few regrets, where we feel our life is complete. It's complete. We wrote an ethical will. We death cleaned our house. Certain things have been done, so we haven't left a sort of mess behind us for other people to clean up. So this is, and a good death is also where your advance directive is followed. An advance directive is all you know is a piece of paper which states how you want to be treated at the end of life. And this is, if you haven't done one, please do one. Only 40% of people have done an advance directive, which is terrible. In communities of color, it's down to 20%. This is not good. This is not good, because when people don't say what they want, then doctors just, oh, okay, well, we should operate. We should do everything we can. I mean, the doctors are, they're hardwired to keep you alive, regardless of your quality of life. And it's not good. We are a very strong supporter of patient-directed care, patients being much more involved in what happens to them. Anyway, back to what is a good death. So good death, as I said, is where your advance directive is followed and dementia rider to your advance directive. If you've not done a dementia rider to your advance directive, please do that. Go to Compassion and Choices. Look on their website, compassionchoices.org. Look for the dementia values tool. Just look it up and fill it out. It takes 20 minutes. And you have a dementia rider, you can then add. This again tells people that, and for example, that if you get advanced dementia, then you want a way out. You don't want to go on suffering. You want an exit. You might say in that dementia rider, if I get pneumonia, don't give me an antibiotic. Yeah. Give me medicine to ease any pain and discomfort, but you might say. So it's important for us to say, so that people, our loved ones, know our loved ones know what we want at the end of life. So anyway, and by the way, another thing about good life, this drives me crazy about doctors. I don't know if you have any doctors here, but doctors are so scared of death. I mean, they in medical school, they're not taught about death and dying. This is one of the, I told Gawanya, his famous book, Being Mortal. One of the first things he says in that book is, when I was in medical school, I've never taught anything about death and dying. And this is true. They're trying to do a little better now. But most doctors are very scared of death. By the way, a digression. Do you realize that doctors do not give themselves these onerous medical interventions they give to other people?
I believe.
Studies have shown over and over again that most doctors want comfort care. They won't have CPR. They won't have a ventilator on that thing. They won't be intubated. You know, they give it to other people. Sure, they hand it out. But when it comes to what they want, they know the suffering those patients go through and don't want it. Anyway, that's a little digression. But so one thing that drives me crazy about doctors is because they're so scared of death, they won't say to a dying patient, "You're going to die." This means that the patient never has the opportunity to say goodbye and thank you. You know, they die, and because they didn't know they were going to die. And I feel that's not a good thing. So a good death, get back to what a good death is. A good death is where you know you're going to die. So you can say goodbye and thank you, and you can have maybe some reconciliations. You know, by the way, another digression. The amount of estrangement is shocking. In my own family, my brother Tim died. His children, 3 children, quarreled over the estate. They are now not talking to each other. This is awful. It's awful and causes so much pain, you know. And so a good death again is a good death is I don't know how many of you read the biography of the Wright brothers, but remember in the Wright brothers, the people in the wonderful brothers who invented flight, they were alienated from their sister, and may know this, alienated from their sister, and in the last few minutes reconciled. So it is good, but better to reconcile earlier, obviously. Okay, so let me pause now. So that's a little yes, question, yes.
Yes, full disclosure, I am a physician. I think.
Would I miss that?
I said full disclosure, I am a physician,
Oh, yes,
a
yes.
pediatrician. So doctors are afraid of being, yes, they may be afraid of that, but they are afraid of being sued.
Yes.
And if the
Good point.
directives aren't clear or aren't there,
Yeah.
and I lived with that, I lived through that with my own father in Germany, by the way. They will do the default, which is reanimation and resuscitation.
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah, quite
and
right.
They have to.
Yeah, quite right.
You know, so if the family isn't united or isn't there.
Right.
They have to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for the points. Excellent points. And I was just going to say that when I have 3 daughters in their 40s, I'm 77. One of my daughters, Christian, is a doctor, and when she was in medical school, she called me very upset because I'm just underscoring the point you've just made. That they had a 91-year-old man who'd come in, and they'd called a code blue on this guy, and they you know, all the nurses and doctors and everyone had run into the operating room and crushed his ribs and broke his sternum and all, and tried to give him CPR. And my daughter Christina said to me, it was the most shocking thing. Everyone knew he was going to die. He was near death. And this was totally pointless. But to your point, they then were able to say to the family, we did everything we could, even though the doctors knew that it wasn't going to work. So yeah, there's I feel a point. Yes,
We do have on the chat.
Oh, please.
To tell us again where to get the dementia rider.
The dementia rider, there are many places to find this. I've looked at all of them, and one of the best is on happens to be, on the website for Compassion and Choices. That website is Compassion and Choices, I misread. Compassion, very good organization. Many of you know it. Yes, oh, good, yeah, they're excellent. So compassionandchoices.org, and go there and look up dementia values and tool. You'll quickly find it, and fill it out. But let me give you all my email address. It's write this down, please.
Yes.
Christopher dot N. Oh, here, I've got cards. Oh my gosh. My gosh, I forgot about that. Here. I've got cards.
Okay.
Feel free. Here. Feel free to email me, because some of you may have questions.
I want to put this in.
Here.
Okay, it's,
So
your website.
And my website has lots of, has lots of freebies on it, lots of free handouts about funeral planning, about green burial, all sorts of things. So help yourselves, it's all free. Everything I do is pro bono. So my website is chrispalmeronline.com. It's on that card. I just given you my card. And also I gave you my email address because some of you may have private and sensitive issues that you don't want to raise here, but you might want advice on. And I'm very happy to help you. So feel free to write to me and say, yes.
Yes, Chris, I just want to agree with you.
Oh, thank you.
As a person of color, we don't speak about that.
Yeah.
So when I was coming this morning, and I talked to my daughter and I said, I'm going to adult education and today we are talking about that, and she was like, because in
Yeah.
our culture,
Yeah, well, and in
if you speak about something, so you are calling that thing to happen in your life. So if you speak about that, then you're about to die.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's
If you
like,
don't speak
I know, it's crazy. I mean,
about-
hey, we Americans are the same way, and
we're worse.
we're worse. And yes, it's like saying you're more, if you talk about sex education, you're more likely to get pregnant. It makes, talking about dying doesn't make it more likely you're going to die. Thank you for the point. Thank you for making that point. And death and dying is a taboo subject, but what I find is that when people start talking about it, they actually get very interested. They want to know how you die. How do you say to a dying person? What's the best way to treat them and to talk with them, and what's going to happen to me people want to know what's going to happen. Am I going to be in great pain and so on? So it's a very good, there's this taboo subject, and there is this taboo about talking about it, but it is very important. So I want to commend all of you for coming this morning. You could have easily slept on and not bothered, but thank you for inviting me here to talk about it.
Excuse me, you mentioned that the website which would provide a great deal of information is called compassionchoices.org.
Compassionandchoices.org.
.org. Oh,
And that's the group, just for people to know, that was the one that was working toward legislation here in Maryland.
Yes.
For people in the last 6 months of their lives, to have a choice. It did not pass. I'm working on it every year, but it will continue to be up, so.
Very good. So what's your name?
Pat.
So Pat is talking about, as you all know, medical aid in dying, MAID. It's now legal in 11 jurisdictions. That's 10 states and DC. Delaware is about to approve it, so that'll be another state. But that still only reaches 20% of the population. So 80% of the population doesn't have it. What in medical aid and dying, I'll quickly say this for those of you who may be interested. In medical aid and dying, you are given a lethal dose of drugs, which you self-administer. You have to be over 18. You had to have mental capacity, so it doesn't work for people with dementia. It's very good. Pat and I both strongly support it and are working for it here in Maryland. We hope to get it passed in Maryland in the next few years. But it's not only, I want all of you to know that you have choices at the end of life. Medical aid dying is one of them, but there's also palliative sedation. There's final exit network, which is excellent. The Exit Guide program, I'm on the board of Final Exit Network. It's a very, very, very good organization. Many people don't know of it. You know, they're stopping life-sustaining treatment. These are all ways to, if you get into a position where you're suffering intractable, unbearable pain, these are ways to hasten your death. You're near death anyway. It's just a ways of hastening your death. And VSED, voluntarily stopping drinking, is another way. Okay, now let me just pause. So far, I've been talking about a few digressions. I've been talking about what is a good death. So let me just before I go on, before I go on, any further questions or comments? I welcome anything. Anybody? Oh,
I do have a question. What, if you could sort of in broad strokes outline what's in the dementia rider?
okay, so the question.
Not because, but because if you can't self-administer medication.
Okay, so here's what's in the, thank you for the question. Here's what's in the dementia rider. Dementia rider allows you to spell out how you want to be treated at various levels of dementia. So when you have mild dementia and you're still living a good life and you have capacity, you might say in your dementia rider, please, if I get sick, help me recover. And so then when you get to moderate dementia, then you might say, look, don't go all the way. I mean, and then when you get to advanced dementia, you might say, look, and when I have advanced dementia, that means I don't recognize my loved ones. I don't know what's going on. I may be acting. I'm having been a peaceful, gentle person all my life. I maybe now be aggressive and agitated and if I'm in that situation, please help me find an exit. Now, you're quite right. You can't use medical aid in dying. Can't use that because you don't have mental capacity in the last 6 months when you have dementia, so it doesn't work. But you can, and it's all difficult to use VSED, that is voluntary stopping eating and drinking, because again, as when you were in your pre-self, when you had moderate dementia, you had the resolve and the cognitive capacity to say, I want to stop eating and drinking. But when when you have advanced dementia, then you've forgotten that. So it's very hard. There's obesity, it's very hard. But there is a lot of discussion about not VSED, but SED, stopping eating and drinking. And I have a friend who recently, I'm going to say it bluntly, killed her husband. He had advanced dementia. He had said, when I have advanced dementia, do not feed and let me go. I do not want to exist in that state. But when he got advanced dementia, he kept raiding the fridge. He loved to eat. He kept raiding the fridge. And this friend of mine said to her doctor, hospice doctor, what do I do? And he was also behaving very aggressively. And so she said to him, I'm out of my mind. I mean, he's raiding the fridge. He's going to live another 5 years, and he's behaving terribly. Getting aggressive, hitting me, and so on. And the doctor said to her quietly, up the dose of morphine, which she did. Kept him in bed. He couldn't get out of bed with this increased dose of morphine, and he starved to death. She starved him. He died of dehydration. So yeah, that's a terrible story. I mean, that story raises all kinds of ethical issues in my mind. But still, but so all right. So now, look, we're running low on time. Let me press on here a little bit. So let me just talk very briefly about from the first bucket, ethical wills. Put your hand if you've written an ethical will. Okay, very good. An ethical will, when COVID started in March of 2020, I wrote a love letter to my wife, Gail. We're celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary this year. Well, I wrote a love letter to my 3 daughters. And then I went on and wrote sort of love letters to 60 of my friends. I call these toast letters because I was toasting them, and if there's a bit of levity, I put an image of a piece of toast in the letter. But I realized these were ethical wills because I was telling these people that I love them, and I thanked them for all the support they had given me, and so on and so on. This is what an ethical will is. An ethical will is basically a love letter to your survivors, to your children, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, neighbors, whoever you want to write to. It's very, very important because we die twice, don't we? I mean, we die twice. We die when our brains stop functioning, our hearts stop beating, but we die again when we get forgotten, when the last person who knows us dies. And no one talks about us anymore because they've forgotten us. We die. So an ethical will alleviates the sting, mitigates the sting of both of those deaths. An ethical will gives you a chance to think deeply about your life and answer two fundamental questions. What did my life matter? And does my life have meaning? And so an ethical will is incredibly important. Just can be just a short paragraph. I'll give you an ethical right now. My darling daughter, I love you. You mean so much to me. I know I haven't always been able to say this to you. I know I've been distracted in my life with my divorce and I'm so sorry about that, but I want you to know now, this is in writing, that you are so important to me. I love you. Love, Mom. That is an ethical will. It's just a few lines. Mine tend to be 6, 7 pages. In fact, I'll send you some. Oh, there are some in this book. Yeah, there are examples in this book. But mine tend to be longer. But it can be any length. Anyway, it's just terribly important to write an ethical will. So those of you who've done that, I commend you. Let me pause there for questions. Any questions before we go on? I'm next going to talk about hospice.
The chat.
It said, do not intubate me. My wife told me that many times prior to her death. And when the ambulance came and I told him where she should go, she said, well, I don't think she'll make it there. We'll take her to the closest hospital. And I said, do not intubate her. So do you have an advance directive? It's not here. It's in the will. I didn't have one. When I got to the hospital, they had only intubated.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
And the flip side of that, I'm teary.
Yeah, sure.
When I got to the hospital, my children came from New York, Vermont. They were here the next day. And she was on the table, taking morphine and whatnot. And they walked in, and I swear she smiles. Which happened to 3 children.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I said, okay.
Thank you for sharing that. Was there a question in the chat?
No, the information was put in the chat about the website, so that was great. Thank you, everybody.
So from that first bucket before death, I just picked ethical wills as something to talk about. But now let me take something from the second bucket. Again, it's a random subject. I'm going to talk about hospice. All of you know about hospice. You have to be in 6 months of dying. And it's a wonderful thing. I'm very active in Montgomery Hospice. I'm on the vice chair of the board and I'm a hospice volunteer. In hospice, you get a team of doctors, social workers, interfaith chaplains, hospice volunteers like me, to come to your house and help, But the thing about hospice that most people don't realize, it's not 24/7 care. You are still a lot of work is left to the family. This is very important to understand this. This is why having you might want to consider having an end of life doula help you at the end, because an end of life doula can give something that hospice can't give, which is time. Hospice is very busy. They're very busy, and so and if you have a choice, I encourage you, I mean, there are, to go with a non-profit hospice. There are, of course, some non-profit hospices that don't do well. And there are some for-profit hospices that are very good, but in general, experts in this area will tell you that if you've got a choice, go with a non-profit. For example, they tend to they're much more generous with their non-pharmacological, they have pet therapy, aromatherapy, music therapy, art therapy, they have all sorts of things like that, complementary therapies that can help. So hospice is wonderful. I strongly encourage you. Most people do not go to hospice early enough. Typical length of Montgomery Hospice, 10 or 11 days. Jimmy Carter was over 200. That's very unusual. Our book called over, but this is very unusual. Most people go too late. Why do they go too late? Because doctors hesitate to say, you should, it's time to go to hospice. And doctors, forgive me, doctors will tend to say, let's try another treatment, and of course, there's a lot of miscommunication. When doctors use the word treatment, they're thinking this might give them 2 or 3 days of extra life, Whereas when a patient hears the word treatment, they hear the word cure. So there's a lot of misunderstandings that go on, between medical providers and patients. So, but hospice is wonderful. Does anybody have any questions about hospice or anything else?
Well,
Yeah. Okay. So Carol first, and then you.
well, I experiences that I have, the coordination, well, this is true of all medical care, but are there people that are doulas that you could actually find? Because I haven't run
Yeah,
across.
so again, I give you my email address. Feel free to drop me a note and say, I need a nib doula, please help me, and I'll help you with that. And you just go to Google end of life doulas. Don't use end of life doulas, not death doulas, end of life doulas. And just Google it in the DC area or wherever, wherever, and that might happen. And then just ask around. People like me, just ask around. Say to any, people like me active in the area, just say, come to people like me and say, can you give me some leads to some end of life doulas? Yeah, they're very important.
The quality and then the cost, if you try to keep the person at home, that is such a cost.
Oh, it is. Yeah. So hospice is
the quality and the whatever.
So you have to interview them very carefully.
Yeah,
Yes, Medicare covers hospice, but Medicare does not cover end of life. I'll go to you next, but here first. Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm dealing with a personal experience where my father is in hospice. We just got him into the program, but it's difficult for the doctors to say they've got 6 months. And you can actually be kicked out of hospice if
you're not
recover
declining
well enough and then go back in.
Yeah.
And it seems like our country as a whole, they live in another state. And every state has differences in how they administer these programs. And there seems to be some issues with equity, because some programs cost more than others. And I think it would be good if we actually had more humane people in the national government, but also in other states. Look at this, because the alternative for many people to hospice is going into a nursing home, and that's not great.
Right, it's terrible.
So when you're talking about good death, hospice is wonderful. They do provide, the extra care is really good. But it's, how do you balance it and keep the equity, and actually provide the care that's really needed, sometimes more than 6 months.
Yeah, very, very good. Thanks for that comment. Yes.
I have found both in my family and friends, and even the family of my ops manager, that it's always easy to, no, not easy, but it's easier to look from the outside and say, well, why don't you contact hospice? It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means, and people are not able to do that emotionally. And I have wondered, even if the doctor would bring it up, And I have wondered, is there some neutral entity that can help families? Because I've just been through that so many times.
Yeah.
You know, even in Being Mortal, in the book, he describes, you know, he was all on board and then it was his father.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and he got there,
Yeah.
but it is.
It's a very good point. I think the quick answer to your question is palliative care. In other words, and because if you're in a hospital and you could say to you say to your curative doctor, the doctors who are working on your cure, if you have say breast cancer, and you can say to them, does your hospital offer palliative services? And you all know, of course, that hospice is a sub-unit, is within, hospice is a special kind of palliative care. But a palliative care doctor might be able to persuade a doctor, curative doctor, and say, look, it's clear to me not much more can be done, you know. And doctors are just to repeat the point I made before, doctors tend to be reluctant to say to somebody, you're dying, there's nothing more I can do. They don't want to admit of defeat and yeah.
In this case, I was not worried about the doctors. I've just seen it that the families, because hospice
The
is
families don't want to.
emotionally.
No, you're quite right. Yeah, no, you're.
That they were perfectly on board theoretically 5 years.
Yes, but now.
But when you got
Yeah.
to that, so but again, I think palliative care.
Yeah.
Can be both with the physicians and the family can be a gateway.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have that loaded.
Yes. No, I love the point you're making, and patients. Just to underscore the point you're making, patients are sometimes families reluctant to accept hospice because that's, you know, they think the hospice maybe is a fast track to death, but that's not the way to look. The best way to look at hospice is just a way to end your life in a more gentle way. And don't forget the great paradox that Atal Gawande points out, and many other people have pointed out. The great paradox of hospice is that people live often, not always, but live longer.
Yeah.
You know, than compared to people who said, "Give me everything, give me surgery, give me radiation, give me chemo." You know, those they live longer and they live in more comfort. You know, anyway. So yes,
I have a question. What do you have to say about those who experience terror about the prospect of death? That might be the individual who is agitated and anxious and beside themselves, or maybe a family member or members who insist on unending medical care out of fear of the loss of their loved one.
Yeah. Well, I love your question because one reason I got into death and dying because I was terrified.
Yeah. I
was scared, and I decided to confront it rather than run away from it, and that's how I became very active in the area. But I think I don't, you know, this is such a good question, and thank you for raising it. People are terrified. In fact, there's a whole new academic field has risen called terror management theory about just this question, because our fear of death. Many academics think that our fear of death shapes a whole lot of what we do in life, and shapes and influences what we do more than we realize. So I think your question is, what do you do if someone is terrified? Was that
sure?
Yeah. You know, I think the way I don't have a quick answer I don't have a simple answer to your question, but one thing I encourage everybody to do is just talk more about it. You know, when you're fit and young, you know, just talk about it, try and bring it up, and there are ways to introduce it. I mean, for example, you can say to a parent. You can say, look, I know you don't want to talk about it, but I just want to ask you, you saw how grandpa died. What did you think of that? What was that? Is that? Would you be comfortable dying in the same way? I mean, there might be way there, or you could say, look, I need your help. But I know you don't want to talk about it, but I'm very conscious that I could die. You know, we all could die any moment. You know, I could have. So I just need your help, please, Dad. Help me with this. What do you think? Would you know if I'm hit by a bus but survive and I'm barely conscious, I'm in a vegetative state. What do you think I should do in that situation? What would you like me to do? You know, so there may be ways of
quick follow-up. Do
Sure.
you have any familiarity with the use of psilocybin for people in this category?
I'm not an expert on that.
Right.
But I know there's a lot of research being
Right.
done, and it seems to be helpful to some people. So I think we need to keep researching and tread carefully there, but there could be some benefits.
Chris, I just wanted to add that Jenny Friend, we had this incredible person who gave years and years of her life as a nurse, but to be with us, to find our medical whatever, and she would talk to folks, but really we're all followers, and we can talk to each other, to have the courage to open up and not avoid as much, not to preach in any way, but if we have a relationship where people can feel comfortable. And I have to say, in my own experience, there were like 3 people in my life that died the most beautiful death, and they knew they were dying. I would always think, oh gosh, I've got to talk to this person. And then I was with them, and I felt so enlivened and grateful for their presence. And they had faced this and were really open about the dying, and we would rejoice and talk with stories and things we could do, and it can happen.
Yeah.
So I think, we work with each other as much as possible.
Yeah.
As we opened last week about being a mother or a woman, and told some stories that I bet we never heard about each other. The same kind of thing can happen as we're walking this path.
So let me now quickly move on to the third bucket, which is after death, body disposition. So I want to recommend to all of you to have a green burial. My wife, Gail, and I are going to be buried in Reflection Park, which is 40 acres of wild land just outside Silver Spring, about 20 minutes from here. We will be put in a shroud. Our bodies are shrouded or in a simple biodegradable box, buried down 3.5 feet, where the microbial decomposition happens very actively. There'll be no cement vault. There'll be no fancy heavy casket with metal handles, all that crap. There'll be no embalming with all those carcinogens. It'll be very simple and actually quite economic. I mean, it's about $5,000. An average funeral in this country can be up to $12,000-$15,000 easily. And so it's economic. But it's not the only way. I mean, there are other ways, new ways coming on. So let me just go back and just say the conventional ways of disposing of bodies, which is through a flame cremation. I'm saying flame cremation to distinguish it from water cremation, which I'll talk about in a minute. So our flame cremation and embalming and burial. These are carbon intensive and very polluting. And it means that even though you might have spent your life as an environmentalist, as I have, as an environmentalist, here you are dying and insulting the earth, and it's not a good way to leave the earth. So better ways are three better ways. One is I've already mentioned it, green burial. This is how we disposed of bodies prior to the Civil War. I mean, before embalming came on, when Willie Lincoln's son died in 1862 in the White House, he was embalmed, very unusual. And then when Lincoln was assassinated, as you all know, and he went on that 2,000-mile journey back to his Springfield, he was embalmed. This made embalming popular. That led to a lot of people being embalmed, and of course during the Civil War, a good death back then was seen as you were looked at and looked peaceful, so people wanted their sons embalmed if they could be. But prior to all that, we used green burial. I mean, people would die, they were put out on the parlor, they were maybe washed, they had enough water, and they would be put in a simple wooden coffin and taken to the family property or church and buried. So green burial is really how we've done it for eons, and we should go back to it. But there are two other ways I quickly want to mention. One is called natural organic reduction, NOR. Some of you may be familiar with this. Human composting it was pioneered by Katrina Spade out in Washington. Now it's legal now. It's just become legal in Maryland. I lobbied for it, and Wes Moore just signed the bill about 5 months ago. So it's now legal here, and entrepreneurs are coming in and building facilities. Natural organic reduction is where your body is put in a steel capsule. You're surrounded by wood chips and alfalfa and straw, and over about a 7 week period, your body decomposes and you turn into 1 cubic yard of beautiful soil. So you're converting the body into soil. You can then put under a tree or do whatever you like with it, is very, very good, used for conservation purposes, whatever. So natural organic reduction or human composting is a very good thing to think about. And then the third alternative is water cremation. Archbishop Desmond Tutu disposed of his body using water cremation. This is where you put the body in a sort of capsule. You're surrounded by water with 5% lye, and over 14 hours it decomposes. If the bones haven't decomposed, like with flame cremation, you use a cremulator to crush the bones, and that's the way we do it with flame cremation, and the same thing with water cremation. And then you end up with ashes like you do with flame cremation, and it's far gentler. And the reason Desmond Tutu wanted it is because he was an environmentalist who strongly fought against climate disruption, and he wanted to dispose of his body in a green, responsible way. So these 3 ways are good. By the way, how are we doing on time? What's the time?
We've got about 15 minutes left.
It's a 10 o'clock.
Yeah, let's see, there's.
Oh, I can't. Okay, very good. So let me pause. I've got more to say, but let me pause. Questions or comments?
Are you going to address some of the political issues here? Because this is a real troubling thing to me. And you obviously work with Compassion and Choice as well. And what worries me is what should be a personal decision has somehow gotten in the realm of, and particularly the Catholic Church, and I will be very interested in how the new Pope views this. But one of the reasons we haven't been able to pass this law in Maryland is because of religious disapproval. And I don't know if you have any guidance or if that's just something that time is going to solve.
Well, I am married to a Roman Catholic. Gail is a Roman Catholic. I am a secular humanist, and the Roman Catholic Church very much believes that that God is in charge of ending your life. God will tell you when you're to go, and so meditating dying and other ways of hastening your death are unacceptable to the Roman Catholic Church. So one reason why meditating dying has not become lawful in Maryland is because of the opposition from the Roman Catholic Church. So you say politics. The report 2025 spoke out very strongly against, has a section in there against these progressive ways of ending your life. And so but I don't want to get into politics this morning. Okay. Thank you.
One comment that was made in the chat is that simple burial with no embalming is the Jewish way.
Yeah.
And I would like to note that we do have a crematorium here at the church.
Oh, you have a flame, you have a crematory.
We do.
Oh, interesting,
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, I mean, it's not. Burial. It's the second stage, what happens, yes, excuse me. And I suppose we could have your body actually disposed of in a green way and still not with black in the crematorium, so you could follow that process without being cremated. Yeah, I think that would be fun, yes.
Okay, so I want to begin to wind down this talk. First of all, any other questions or comments from anybody? Yes.
So these 3 green options are all legal in Maryland?
They have now become lawful in the last 6 months. They, for the first time, well, green burial has always been lawful, but the two new methods, natural organic reduction and water cremation or alkaline hydrolysis, they have now become lawful as well.
And there are facilities here who actually,
No, we have no facilities yet in Maryland for natural organic reduction
Okay.
or water cremation, but entrepreneurs are coming in and they are building them. I have friends who are building the facilities. So in the next few years, we will have that option. And so Marylanders will have, are you in Maryland here? You're right, this is Maryland. Yeah, so Marylanders, I will have more options.
how about DC? Does DC have those facilities?
DC has green and I don't think it has facilities. No, it does not. The nearest places to get to have water cremation or are in North Carolina. I think there's in Vermont and Ohio. So you'd have to go some distance.
So wait a bit till we're done.
How are you feeling today?
Chris?
So
Chris,
we're gonna wind down here,
this
because I know
is-
you
yeah,
must get to church.
This is from Zoom land out here. The question, the question that I have is for the individual and of course the family, how do you find religious faith being part of achieving a dignified death or a good death? How does faith play into dying in a dignified way?
I don't know the answer because I am not a religious person, but the only point I can think to make to you is that people with faith are very lucky, and I envy them because because you've got a future to look forward to beyond your physical death. So I think faith can ease the fear, the terror of death. Anybody else have a comment?
Well, I would just say, look to Jesus Christ as a model. He was not afraid. He wasn't excited about it, but he faced it and went through it and felt like this was God's plan and God loves you, even if you have to die and go through that process. And that's certainly, I don't know, that's, others may want to add, but I do think God's love can, even in difficult circumstances where others have actually persecuted and whatever you.
Okay, so let's move on. We have only a few minutes left, and I want to cover something that might interest you. I wrote a letter to my family about 3 years ago, a draft, and it's in the book. It's on page 227, and it goes. But by the way, you should know that I have heart disease. I had a prostatectomy, and all my brothers are dead and died, and I don't expect to live that forever. And heart disease is a terrible way to die. You die of breathlessness. You feel like you're suffocating. It's terrible. So I wrote this letter to my precious family and friends. I've decided to end my life because of the continued pain and unbearable suffering from heart disease. So this letter is a draft. If I ever use it, it'll be with some date in the future. I've lived a full, complete, meaningful, and useful life, but I've had enough and no longer wish to continue. I am a wreck and only a relic of the energetic, productive, and creative person I used to be. I've taken advantage of all the available medical care and interventions. I've decided that further medical treatments are useless and will only hurt me and worsen my life. This decision is mine alone. I am in a rational and calm state of mind and feel completely at ease with this decision. I'm not depressed or mentally unstable. No one has helped me with this decision to end my life, and no one, including the beneficiaries of my estate, has put pressure on me to do so. I support the Final Exit Network and believe in its mission. I've chosen to die now. If I'm discovered before I stop breathing, I forbid anyone, including doctors and paramedics, to attempt to resuscitate me. If I'm revived against my wishes, I shall take legal action against you. Please add the following language to my obituary. Quote, Chris took his own life in a rational self-deliverance toward the end of a terminal disease relating to his heart. He did this not out of cowardice or escapism, but because it made no sense to continue living with an unacceptable quality of life when nothing good or loving or kind could be accomplished. He died with a heart full of love, gratitude, and appreciation for all those he loved and who had supported in his life. End quote. That goes in my obituary. And then if the letter ends, thank you for your understanding, love, Chris/dad/grandpa, kisses and hugs. So I wanted to read that because some of you may want to, feel free to use this as a template for yourselves if you ever want to do that. I also want to, I wrote something in this is on page 212 in the book. Death is a transformative teacher, but few want to become willing students. I hope this book encourages you to become a student of your own end of life and determine what you can do to achieve a good death. I hope you have a spirited and robust old age. Live as long as possible. Agree only to treatments that align with your goals and have total patient agency. When the time comes, I hope you have a rapid and brief deterioration and a painless death at home, surrounded by your loved ones. I hope you will be serene at the moment of your death and have no fear or anxiety. And I just want to end here because I have an 11 o'clock tennis match that I have to get to. I just want to end with something, if I can find it. Oh yeah, here it is. So I don't know how you know much about my background, but I spent 30-40 years as a wildlife filmmaker, traveling all over the world, making films about whales and sharks. If you've ever seen an IMAX film, you've probably seen one of my films, because we make more IMAX films than anybody else. To Fly, Everest, these are all films that we made. Grand Canyon Adventure. So, and I made 3 or 4 films about wolves. Wow. And wolves to me are fascinating. And I want to read you The Wolf Credo by Del Goetz, Goetz. This is on page 262. Respect the elders. Teach the young. Cooperate with the pack. Play when you can. Hunt when you must. Rest in between. Share your affections. Voice your feelings. Leave your mark. And I just want to end by saying, all of you, by doing these educational programs and having people like me come and others, you are leaving your mark. And I commend you for the work you do in this church. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Yes, and I just have a few words to say. I can't thank the lay ministry enough. The members are just amazing, and we've had some really wonderful programs. Thank you all for the contributions. I did want to mention one thing, that over the summer, there's an opportunity monthly to participate in a small group. And I think there are like 4 different time periods that are being offered. Contact Denise, excuse me. That's an interesting combination. Anyway, and that will be continuing. In the meantime, our lay ministry will be busy looking at programs that really are important for us in our lives. And we welcome all of your participation, your suggestions. I can't thank you guys enough for making this possible. It's a weekly event, and It's been here setting up every week, Diane, what, Venus, I mean, Don, we've got, have been, I mean, the members here, I don't want to leave anyone out because it's been a very vital ministry, but all of you, we're all in this together. We welcome your suggestions and we really appreciate, we can't thank Chris enough, so.
If anybody wants me to sign a book, if I haven't already done it, I'd be delighted to do that. Happy to sign a book.
Yeah.
That's, no, you know Alice Shelley. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at Carol, not you.
Yes.
I'm giving one of these to her.